Branding is when you are crystal clear about who you are, what you do, what problems you solve, and who you solve those problems for. And then, then a lot of people take it to marketing. So branding would be being clear about the word. A lot of people ask me, can you help me spread the word? Yes, I can help you spread the word. What is the word to be spread? I don't know. Well, that's what branding truly is. And then marketing are the actions in which you take to spread that word. Right? So that's the simplest way I could put it in a, I don't know.
Great. I think that was really good. Another thing that's really interesting to me is branding versus positioning. I read a book a long time ago. I think it was called Positioning it was Al Reese and Jack Trout, right? And that was my first time learning about positioning and the difference between positioning and branding. And myself, I sometimes get mixed up over, am I branding here or am I positioning something, right? So maybe Cristi, do you want to talk about positioning?
Well, what did you recognize? When you saw the difference between branding and positioning, what did you recognize when you read that book?
Well, I feel like branding is something that is a feeling that somebody would get when they think about you or your brand. And I think the positioning of how to I usually would position a product that I have so that way I could position it at a certain price point. I'm usually thinking about positioning as the price point is kind of where I correlate it myself. Yeah. I don't know if that's correct. So that's kind of my take.
Right. So for me, positioning is a comparison. It's a comparison to where are you playing in this industry? Are you playing with high prestige, mass market? Where are you playing? So often you'll see these dimensions, these positioning dimensions. And what I like to play with is the concept of not comparing yourself to others when you're thinking about your branding, but actually finding your own game, creating your own game. So there's some, you really have to play with it, see where you want to go with it, whether you want to position yourself against others or whether you want to find a new game. And I think companies that really win are ones that create something like Tesla, for example. I mean, they're just playing a new game.
I find that fascinating. I actually find it very challenging to market something and make it something that nobody else has, I find that to be quite a challenge, but it's almost essential to do whenever you're marketing something, right? So is that what you're saying? Like positioning is more of like, how do you make it something that nobody else has?
Yeah, that's my opinion, yeah.
So I'm going to put you on the spot here, or everybody on the spot here. Let's just say, for example, I'm going to open up a new burger restaurant, right? What are some ways that I could open up a burger restaurant and come up with my marketing and then be something that nobody else does? There's so many burger places. Every fast food chain is pretty much burgers, right? So how do I do that? What's something I could...
I don't want to hog the...
No, please go.
Anybody, yeah? Good.
Well,
I think it's also, no matter if it's a burger joint or whatever the business is, it's about infusing that with your personality within your brand as well.
Correct.
So what does that look like for you? Not necessarily as a personal brand, but for the brand of your burger joint.
Okay, go
Sorry,
ahead.
I just think storytelling about the brand is really important too. So if you did set up a burger joint, it's telling a story where people want to come and be a part of that community or that tribe, and they resonate with it. I think that's really important for positioning.
Yeah.
So how you communicate can be a positioning statement. How you're going to communicate, in your restaurant, the experience people have, all that. Is that what you're saying would be
Yeah, it's that look and the feel. It's beyond the brand, because I think of the brand as almost like an entity, but then it's that connection with that brand. So how are people going to relate to it?
But the brand starts with the uniqueness of the person. Who here knows Dougie Love, the hot dogs Dougie Love? He's a great friend of mine. This guy's crazy. He traveled all over the United States to find and discover different types of hot dogs. He's got $100 hot dogs, and he's on Granville Street. Super simple little, he's got food trucks and all that. But it started with a crazy guy that had a crazy life and a crazy story to tell, and it became something. See, you can't build a brand like this. It's like building trust. Branding is building trust, which means it takes time, and you need to build this over time, and people need to know you in a specific way, however you're positioned, and then you become an expert there, and then people, they're triggered by who you are and what you do, and by the emotion. You said earlier, right? Branding is a feeling, but that is triggered by who you are, and how you're doing it differently than other people, just because of who you are. Like, you don't have to invent big things there.
Well, that's really interesting. I had a challenge even with my branding where it was called web friendly, which was just a cool name that I came up with. And you know, I've talked to branders in the past and said, "Now you're not actually that friendly when you're on stage, right?" Like,
That's
if
true.
anyone's heard me speak, right? Right? Like I'm not. Like I'm pretty abrupt and I shut people up and stuff like that, right? And like and some people love it and they tell me that's hilarious and they think, you know, and I've had people walk out and they said that they were offended by how I was speaking, and sometimes I'm not really friendly sometimes, right? But my thought on web friendly was like, you're gonna learn how to be friendly with the web, right? Like you're gonna learn how to use the internet kind of thing, right? And then I had this little bee, the smiley bee that's like really cute, and I had one person say they don't want to associate their certificate to a cute bee. They want something more serious, you know? And I didn't know anything about branding. I wouldn't consider myself a branding expert, right? And so, you know, it was challenging because it wasn't my personality, right? So maybe if we can kind of even jump into that whole rebranding. What if you created this brand, now you're saying your personality needs to be infused with it. I saw very recently, it was just last week, I saw a site, it was a consultant, she's a marketing consultant, and her site was called The Middle Finger Project.
Oh, yeah.
And I was like, that is a name I could use, right? Like that, I loved it. And then I went through her content, and all the content really spoke to that, right? And I was like, this is great. She's a good marketer, right? And I contacted her. I said, I got to talk to you, right? So how do you do something like that? Like if you're already in a business, right? You've already got a brand, but it doesn't have a great positioning statement. You're not really different than everybody else, right? And now it's your personality you want to infuse into that brand. How do you do it if you already got a brand?
I think this is the point that Isabelle brought up. That was, she just started alluding to it, but you know, it's about figuring out who you are at your core and infusing that into your business. But here's the mistake that most businesses make, is that they think, okay, so I'm, really high, I make super high quality donuts or whatever. So my donut shop's gonna be high quality. Yeah, and so is every other donut gonna be high quality. So I think the mistake people make is when they need to rebrand, it's usually because they haven't created a strong enough foundation, a core foundation. If you have a super rock solid core foundation, you won't need to rebrand because you're branding yourself, right? So your friend the hot dog guy, so he was this wacky, crazy guy who traveled all over the world, which has nothing to do with hot dogs at first glance. This guy travels all over the world. What does that have to do with hot dogs? But he found a way to integrate those two things, and I think that is the epitome of branding, is when you look at your whole life, not just your work, and say, what is truly unique about me as a person, and find a way to drive that straight into how your product is unique.